Welcome back to, as you see, Global HR Business. Get out of the way here. See, all about global business, mobile talent, and we're live. And it's August 27th. And um, I welcome you to the TV talk show. This is going to be part of a series on communicating and how to do it. And this is from a business context. With us today is Christian Turnedden from California. In fact, we're all from California today. And Eric Shen from Silicon Valley, Mountain View is my favorite town. Gary Sanger from, what's that called, that amusement park near by you?
Six Flags Magic Mountain.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So you and Paul Falcone lived near the roller coaster. Is that right?
Well, we've been known to frequent that. Nice to see you, Ed. Really a
Nice to
pleasure.
see you. Thank you. And Dr. Ken Lloyd joins us again. Thank you very much for being here. So this show is all about communicating at work, at home, out in life. But this is a business show, so let's talk about it in that context for now. And how do you communicate with uh, the CEO? I'll just call it that. Okay, the leader. Do you communicate differently with a CEO than you would with a staffer? Well, of course you would. Okay, so Eric, you're nodding your head energetically, so I'm going to call on you first. In your background as a developer, a land developer, and a medical developer, builder, and architect, you deal with a lot of smart people and a lot of very plugged in people and wealthy people. How how in simplistic terms, how can you tell the audience is the best way to communicate with someone who can make or break you?
That's a good one. Um,
Sorry. Hope you've had
no,
coffee.
no, and I have it. Let me answer it this way, everyone. Uh, to me, the best way to communicate is to hear what they have to say first. I oftentimes, if I jump in to what I want to do, what I want to say, oftentimes backfires. Right? So these powerful people who are in charge, they are decision makers, stakeholders, they like to tell you what they want to do or what they want to see, what they want to achieve. So to me, it's just let them talk more than half the time. That's usually the rule I was given. Let them talk more than 50% of the time.
Gary Singer?
You're mute, Gary.
You're mute.
I was recalling a few times, you've got a big agenda, you've got a big ask, you've got a big situation that let's say you're in corporate America and you report to the corner office. And you've got a very important situation you're trying to resolve. And you've done your homework, you know what you're talking about, and you know what would be the ROI for the entity. I think Eric is so spot on. You look at the guard of the office, and that's usually the admin assistant, and I think even today, a lot of those roles are kind of running the life of the CEO. And so I was all primed to get an answer to a very big budget question. And so the lady at the front, I've since forgotten her name, she and I were good buddies. And I would always get a thumbs up or neutral or thumbs down as to whether it was a good time to talk with the boss and do any major ask. Well, this time it was the thumbs down. And I said, what happened? He said, well, they found the neighbor's cat dead in their backyard and they're really distraught about the whole thing. Well, I I went in anyway, and I knew John was a little bit upset. And I told him a bad joke about a cat joke. And he at least laughed, at least got him to be humored. And I said, well, hope that goes well, and, tell the neighbors, etc. But I was trying to be conscientious about it after my sick cat joke. And then I decided, well, I'm going to come back. If the timing's bad, if their mind is on other bigger things, and his was, and mine is, probably a C-level priority versus something that was really important, skip it, drop it, wait.
Mhm.
So listen first. Is the setting right? Is that audience going to pay attention? Do they care about this? And then give them the perspective, give them some choices. And, don't leave the problem at the CEO's desk. You're giving him or her some solution. Big story. I think it takes a lot of work to talk briefly. And if you thought about how do we talk briefly, how do you get to the point? I'm not doing it very well right now, but as you get to the point about asking for a major budget and you're trying to get approval from the CEO and the timing's bad, it's his agenda, it's her agenda. Eric, that's what I took from your comment. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Okay, let's go to Dr. Ken Lloyd. That perspective, please.
Yeah, to Gary's point, initially, I'm reminded of I think it was Mark Twain's quote, who apologized for writing such a long letter because he didn't have time to write a short one. And it just says so much. And certainly to Eric's and Gary's point, it's interesting. You talk about, well, you want to go in and talk to the CEO, but notice all the comments are not about, what's on my mind, what am I thinking, what am I asking, but let's take a look at the individual person's mindset, the situation, the timing, to really make sure that when we are going to go talk with anyone, that we've thought about them, their perspective, their mindset, and where they're coming from. And as you mentioned, the listening aspect is extremely important, but there are CEO different types of personalities. Some are more introverted, some extroverted, some are more aggressive, some are more engaged in the work than others. Frankly, a lot of entrepreneurs, studies show, are not the most focused. They're not that they're suffering or in any way suffering from ADD, but their attention's on a lot of different stuff all at the same time. So make sure we understand them as individuals when we want to talk to them, and help us phrase the ask itself, as well as the way we're putting sentences together, the length, the time, the content, all of that, and their mood, to really be aware of what's going on with them when we talk with them, and be very sensitive to that. And as Eric said, go in there in a listening mode. It's very important.
So what about the feedback? When you worked for that charismatic company, along 18 years or so in a leader position, you demanded feedback from everybody, and that's a communication process, of course.
I didn't demand. That's getting feedback or else. No, it's always good to get feedback. I think the kind of feedback that people are interested in, though, is not just unfounded, hypercritical, unconstructive. But if there is going to be feedback, all feedback is the communication process is showing, yes, I heard you, here's what I think. And then we go back and forth, and it's an exchange more than I'm going to dump a bunch of feedback on you and thank you, meeting is over. So it's really just part of the dialogue. It really should be open, two-way communication, and inherent to that is feedback and other elements that help people understand what's really being said.
Thank you, Christian.
Well, that's nice, Ed. You're letting me go last, so I have to figure out what else I could contribute here. But one of the both Eric and Ken kind of said some of what I wanted to say, but I want to combine it and reframe it. First of all, I try in general, you said business context, Ed, but I try to do it in my personal life as well. I try to follow the golden rule. And what that means is I would like to treat everybody how I want to be treated. And that's for all humans. So at that point, I don't even care what position this person has that I'm going to talk to. So first of all, I'm trying to think, what are they like? What Gary said, their mindset. Gary, you had help, but you were also smart enough to seek it out. That, of course, is a huge bonus when you can kind of gauge it before you're even in front of the person that you're talking to. So I'm trying to figure that out as much as possible. I'm trying to figure out also, what do they already know? Because we talked about being brief. If they already know a lot of what I'm going to say, I have to certainly not repeat everything. And then I would try to understand, okay, now I have an idea of the person. I want to treat them like I would want to be treated. I have maybe an idea of what their mindset is and what their mood is at this point. And then I'm going to try to listen. And why am I trying to listen? Not just because they're powerful, but also because that gives me more information about all these assumptions I made about their mood, right? Gary, it's incredible that you came in with a cat joke. I mean, that's so out of left field. I love it. It's very gutsy, but also very out of left field. I mean, I'm sure you'll be remembered for that. It's kind of the opposite of what I would have done, right? I would have been very like, I heard that, and you're, I can come back, but you just went straight in. So I would like to assess the moment as much as I possibly can when I go in and talk to that person, and just whenever I talk to a high-level person, I've moved a ton of them. The golden rule typically went a long ways, not always, but most of the time, people were very happy that I talked to them like a normal person. I took
So
them
you're-
seriously, and their what they had in
Yeah.
mind, what their needs were, and so on.
I'm sorry for stumbling into your conversation here, but
No.
what
So
What I'm-
Ed, I can't resist. So what did the cat look like the last time you saw it? And in this joke, of course,
my
it's just
God,
been
you
run over
did
by
that.
a truck, and here's your cat. Well, you got to be friends. You got to have a personal relationship
Yeah,
that
I'd say
CEO
so.
to get so personal. And sadness and happiness, how do you deal with difficult stuff? Look, I think in corporate situations, work on the important stuff. And is the stuff you're talking about important in the CEO's eyes? Is the timing good? This is time critical, and we have to make a decision by noon today, sir or ma'am. And here's the situation. I think too much oftentimes is being made about being nice. I think when you got a situation that's really key to the enterprise and you lay it out there, and you've had time, Dr. Lloyd, to speak briefly and present the options. I mean, that executive team, you're dealing with big stuff, important stuff. And if you're a key role with that, act like it and do it. Sorry to cut you off, Ed. I couldn't resist that truck moment with the cat. I'm very sorry.
So your background, Christian, is from a positive point of view, Swiss, German. You're right to the point. You want to have the story before. What are you talking about? What is the reason for the commentary? What do I need to learn from this? And so that just a précis, if you will, of what that background means to me anyway, about being very precise and full disclosure and no funny games and communicating. Okay, just be thoughtful, be straight.
Sorry to interrupt, but I assumed also I wouldn't have a friendly kind of relationship like what Gary just said, right? It would be very distant. The person may barely know who I am. And yes, I would like to know as much as possible. Now, to Gary's point, if it's time critical, then the golden rule comes into play. Because if I'm being slow, because I have to get my facts straight, everything up to the last detail, golden rule applies. These people are going to be at in a bad spot. I don't want that to happen to them. I have interrupted meetings with my boss and my boss's boss because something was time critical, because I knew that's what they would appreciate. So it's always thinking about what is more important to the other person. If there's an emergency, then that's probably more important to not just me, but the leadership as well.
Interesting conversation,
Different
unplanned.
context.
So let's show that slide that
Okay.
you have prepared. This is one of several. As you'll open that message I sent to all of you after the show's over, just go through it when you can. And then if you want to come back on the next program, which is the 3rd of September, 8 a.m., we'll go deeper on other slides. So this one is about when there's conflict. So this is from a genius and a graphic artist, excellent, as you could see. And there's a lot to read here, but they're just talking about what kinds of conflict, and this is generally within a business context. So we're all looking at this basically for the first time, and there's a lot of words there. But I want to go to you first, Dr. Ken Lloyd, because of your status and because of your basic experience in being an author and communicating to people like me who are dummies about a lot of things. So when you're managing conflict in the business setting, Ken, you know, in the background, I could say I'm the boss, so I'm going to talk first. But that's really not the right thing to do, as I'm understanding right now today on this show. Ken, what do
You
you
look at
think?
this, you look at these 10 communication strategies, and all of them, just on a quick read right now, all of them just make terrific sense in terms of dealing with other individuals in a conflict, whether you are in the conflict yourself or you're there trying to help resolve it. The concepts that are mentioned here, all of them are just excellent ideas. And you can see it's not coming in and saying, all right, here's what you're going to do, over and out and goodbye, but rather let's talk about it. Let's clear the air. Let's be honest. Let's be respectful. Let's truly listen to what others have to say. It's a totally safe exchange. And the idea is there a way we can put this together to everyone's benefit? And I know in here, I like the thought where they say, don't use the word you a lot. And that's very common in persuasive training and training on negotiations. And certainly in situations where you're giving feedback. If it's you did this, you didn't do that, you could have done, you sound very parental, as opposed to saying, why did you do this? I'm confused as to what happened here. It's just less accusatory, it's less negative, and it's a way to keep it going. So I know that's part of this. They're saying avoid using those kinds of terms. I also like the focus on nonverbal communication and looking at more than just the words, listening very carefully, observing, if you will, reading what's going on here. But you can see it's not a one-way, dump it all on all of them and say, now we're done. But let's see, is there a way for us to truly collaborate and figure out the best way to resolve this? It doesn't mean to compromise. It certainly doesn't mean to pamper them. I know that Gary is not into pampering employees, but it's not. It's being, let's be businesslike, smart, decisive, and get this resolved so we can move forward and continue to do the excellent stuff that we're really here to do.
I want to go to the architect here. So the architect, please correct me if I'm off base here and steer me in the right direction. What I'm saying is that an architect is a planner, creating a narrative and then expressing it through the design and the construction. So Eric, I'm going to stop talking. Please take it from here and give us an architect's perspective on communicating the narrative.
You're on mute. there.
And you were talking about communicating in the way I would say it is I like to build them in layers.
Hmm.
How's that? So
Yeah. Well, foundation first. Yeah.
correct. And usually that foundation I may have mentioned to all of you in the last call is I always like to start with why. Why? So once you have given the why, you explain the reasoning, whether it's from your perspective or you're explaining it objectively, the why usually pave the foundation, also allow people to think, and they can decide whether they want to buy in or not. Even if they don't buy in, there is a very objective way to begin expressing their point of view. So I personally always like to begin with the why, and then I built layers upon layers of information, one after that, usually from from the more basic to the more in-depth. I don't know if
Perfect.
I answer your question, but
Yeah, you did.
that's the quick response when you ask the architect the question, and I answer in layers.
So I'm going to bring up my own thing here. As a conference planner, producer, moderator, leader, I have to design what I think will keep the audience involved as we go through the day. Not only the topic, but the setting, the length, if there's visuals or just somebody talking, or getting the audience involved at the right time to take it to another level, just like what we're doing here. And again, out there, audience in the world, this is an unscripted program. We do have organization, but it's not scripted. Your thing about the why is exactly the foundation. Okay, why are we sitting here today? Well, we're a bunch of guys communicating. We're in the global meeting room, what I call it, and unscripted once again. So the idea is we're drawing our own life, our own experiences, and where we are today in that process. So as a program producer, uh, I have a goal in mind, and that goal, so I'm looking at the end. You started with the foundation, but I'm looking at the end as, so it's a push to get there, and it's also a magnet pulling me towards that end by setting up what will happen first along the way. Now, what I'm going to imagine, Eric, that an architect will take what I've just said and figure out how to make the building not fall down. Okay, when you get to that end point. So what I'm trying to do today is to communicate clearly to the audience through our interchange here, our dialogue, using this graphic as an example of a track to run on. How do we get from here to there? So I will bring in the conference idea, I will bring in an expert speaker on dual career issues. It's a dilemma, costly mistake if it's not solved. Okay. All right. And then if we're talking about a medical TV, health and wellness, and that show was going to be September 5, I've got a world-renowned brain surgeon who's going to be one of the speakers, and an executive with the company building the new space station, in which they will do super advanced medical research in zero gravity. And so the brain surgeon hasn't sent me his talking points yet, and I don't know what to ask other than just set the stage for why do you need zero gravity? What's wrong with Earth? And there's a reason for all that. Okay, so I'm going to bring in an expert witness, if you will, to talk about what the end goal will be, and that is a communication about what's going on with Parkinson's research, Alzheimer's research, and why the space station is going to be the place to find out how the molecules in the brain can accept some kind of introduction of medicine. I'm done with that idea. But Gary, when you're doing interviews for executive recruitment, executive search, what comes to mind right now, and I'm going to interject this, is that this big hire at Starbucks, okay, the new CEO, is not going to work in Starbucks headquarters. He's going to commute once a week. So that means he's going to be like me. I'm in my dining room table here. And so this new CEO is not going to be down the hall where the other C-suite people are, but certainly through Zoom and whatever, it's going to be right there. So does that help you recruit people who don't have to worry about leaving the Midwest for California? It's high expense. Is that possible? What do you think as a solution? How do you communicate that?
Well, it's a loaded question. And if I think of do my math here, there's 5 of us on the call. And I have a CEO opportunity in Fort Lauderdale, Omaha, Montreal. And each of you has the background, each of you has the experience, each of you wants to make $1 million, and each of you is an expert in that industry, let's assume. But if you have to move to one of those 3 places because it's required to be in person, I suspect we might be 0 for 5 unless one of you would live in one of those places, because you got an 8-year-old, you got grandparents, you got a mortgage, you got school, you got all these complications. So I think if you're trying to play the numbers game, I have to be cautious that I don't put my biases to say, look, I think that's a silly idea because I think the executive ought to be in the building on that campus where you're trying to run a very, very large organization. I have to put that aside. But if that board, that executive team has said, look, we're going to make this virtual, we're going to make that work, I have to respect that. And if I'm then trying to find he or she that can go do that best, and then that board or that search committee has a choice to make. So again, virtual, hybrid, in person, we've all grown accustomed to what that is since 2019 and COVID with how you deal with that. I've got clients now. I've got a lunch today that's now a Zoom because they had an outbreak of COVID in the corporate office. And this particular large organization has been one of the most careful throughout COVID and recently, but yet they've got stuff going on now where many of their executives have COVID. I don't know what that means as it relates to whether it's good or bad, but specifically your question, if I have to be in Seattle, one of us, would any of us move there for that package if we're well qualified? That's an individual decision. But if you in fact said, look, you can do it and do it well, my job's a lot easier. That's the short answer. My job's a lot easier because geography is not the first big hurdle that I have to deal with. I wanted to comment, when you think about, all right, you're going to be considered for that CEO spot. And Eric, let's say I'm meeting you for the first time, like I am here this morning on the Zoom. If you and I had a scheduled one-on-one interview, I mean, I already have seen your background. You've seen, maybe an overview of the search, of the job, of the company. It's likely to be confidential. I've been known, if that's going to be a position, you have to be the face of it. I've been known to say, hello, good morning. I am absolutely thrilled to see you. I'd like you to sit up, walk back out of your office, walk back in and pretend that you're in front of an audience of 500 people and give me 3 minutes about your current company. I mean, can you walk in those shoes? Can you talk? Can you tell the story? And I'll tell you, it's less than 50-50 about he or she doing that well. But isn't that what they have to do in a normal job? When they're in the elevator, they're getting out of their car, they're going having a coffee. You better be able to stand up and be that poster boy, that poster girl of what your company's all about. I could go on a long time, but you get me really excited with that question, Ed.
Oh, thank you. Ken,
Yeah, I totally agree with Gary on that. Whatever my personal feelings are on hybrid versus remote versus on-site, it's not my decision. If this is what the organization leadership prefers, then you work within those parameters and try to help make the situation, whatever it might be, come out that much more positively. I personally really like face-to-face interaction, formal and informal. And certainly when we're in a group session, it can be difficult, particularly if it's any kind of a so-called educational session, to really know what's being absorbed, what's really on those laptops that the people have in front of them. And someone might have a question and won't be able to pick it up just because the subtleties of in-person interaction aren't there. But frankly, a lot of things happen in companies informally, in the parking lot, at the coffee bar, walking down the hall, dropping in. And it's kind of nice to have that. At the same time, there are great advantages to having the opportunity to work on a hybrid basis. So I really think we just, as we're doing, tailor it to the individuals, the organization itself, to their goals or philosophy and their product and their overall operations, try to work whatever is best for them. Because frankly, it's one size does not fit all, one approach does not fit all. So we have to be open and receptive to that and look at these entities as individuals.
so in communicating with people, whether it's at the coffee pot or in the elevator or at the boardroom, let me ask you about differences in people's knowledge base and ability to, the cognitive strength of putting words together to express themselves in a clear way when they're nervous about how am I coming across, or I don't want to make a mistake, or I don't want them to think that I'm stupid, or whatever, okay? Or the role of stereotypes, whether I'm Black or Asian, or I have a physical or mental handicap of some kind that shows, and yet I'm in a responsible position to produce something and to help solve a problem. How do you deal with that differential? I mean, do you have to be Mr. Wonderful, Madam Wonderful, and be Oprah Winfrey, who can talk with anybody about anything and be beautiful and calm and expressive? Most people are not that way. And I'm rambling on a little bit, but how, and also I'm looking at this conflict sheet here, cheat sheet, and it's about staying tuned in, making it safe, ask for ideas. How can you remember all that stuff when you're in a nerve-wracking situation, Ken?
I think the idea is to make sure you understand the situation as well as do all that you can to really understand the person with whom you're interacting, because they're all different. As my grandmother used to say, wouldn't the world be a boring place if we all were the same? And the message is, even if you look at this listing, you want to use empathy, try to understand where these people are coming from and whoever it is that you're talking to, communicating with. What's their interest, what's their mindset, what's their background, what are their skills, what's their expertise, and that'll help you adjust the way that you communicate, and certainly to actively listen to what they're saying, making sure that you understand them, not rushing them, not pushing them, not criticizing. But as Christian said, to apply the golden rule as well. How do you want to be treated? I'd like to be heard. I'd like to be respected. I'd like people to listen to me and to what I have to say, and not to be given the rush or to have someone make me feel like I don't know what I'm talking about, or to push me through something, or basically abbreviate the entire discussion. So I think a lot of it is understanding the individual with whom you're communicating. And as Gary said, the situation, what are the demands? What's the timing? What are the resources? And that will help you in the interaction. So using empathy and having insight into yourself. How am I really presenting this? Am I being fair and honest and open and not unnecessarily critical or negative? To really take a careful snapshot of the whole situation as it's ongoing, and that will help with that interaction. It looks like Christian kind of wanted to say something there.
Yes, I did. Thank you. I do. I want to look at another aspect of your question, Ed, and leave what Ken said, just leave that be because it's great. But how do you learn that is what I heard. How do you learn that? Well, let's assume that you don't have a talent that just came out of nowhere to speak publicly, semi-publicly, keep you calm, to use your words and know how to express yourself. One of the ways that I learned it was in teacher training. I was on the way to becoming a high school teacher for English and history. Decided after doing it for 6 months that I love teaching, and I love teaching English and history, but I can't stand teenagers. And that's why I'm not a high school teacher in Switzerland now, among other things. But the training itself was very, very good, very, very valuable, because it was hardcore. We were put in front of a video camera, and my teacher said that the students are going to take whatever is weird about you, or whatever they think is weird about you or different about you, and they're going to focus on that, and they're going to laugh about that, and they're going to distract you from what you're trying to say. And you have to figure out how to deal with that. If you're somebody who is constantly scratching their nose while you're speaking in public in front of an audience, guess what the students are going to do? Those teenagers. There'll be a lot of nose scratching going on. So that's just an example to show you what kind of training we had. And it helped significantly in overcoming some of the hurdles as a non-trained person, some of the hurdles or obstacles you'd face when you're put in front of an audience. So a lot of practice, a lot of exercises, a lot of training in front of a camera to get better at it and to learn how to speak. Now, Gary's example with the CEO, that's another league altogether. That is, and I'm sure most CEOs had some kind of special training to be able to do, 3 minutes unprepared and come across as they know what they're talking about. Now, mind you, we all can think of examples where that didn't work. They don't always get it 100% right either.
Well, I want to congratulate you, Christian, because with 2 teenagers at home,
Yeah.
listening to what you just
Those
said.
I don't hate. Mine are different from everybody else's.
Congratulations. That is super news. So we have around 12 minutes left on this. I think we can go on forever. So if you could take down that slide now and we can go full screen again, that would be great. Thank you for putting it up there. It's very helpful to me anyway, and I hope to our audience. And in the next program, which is September 3 at starting 8 a.m. California time, we will show other slides that are in that message I sent to each of you. So please come back. Okay, let's talk about something that it could be a little difficult, but doesn't have to be. And that is the communication style that Kamala Harris is showing. And whoever she's listening to in the Democratic Party, maybe Nancy Pelosi, I don't know, but it's perfect strategy to go against MAGA at this point in time, because it captures the spirit of the wider audience that they're appealing to, and creates a style of leadership and believability, or you want to believe it. At least I do. I'm not asking for political discussion here. I'm just talking about the style that we saw on TV this past week. I think it was genius. What do you think, Eric? Oh, you're on mute.
Did you ask Gary or Eric? I didn't hear you clearly.
Well, I'm going to ask everybody, but let's go to Eric first.
You know what? I'll let other people speak first because I honestly haven't watched her presentation yet.
Ah, okay.
I'll deflect as well. I wanted to comment first. Ed, what makes you such a great host and moderator is you're genuine. No, and I think that's a big deal.
Mhm.
I think that's a big deal where you listen. Fully present is a term that one of my former bosses always was talking about. You know, are you fully present with that issue? Are you fully present with listening? Eric's comment before, are you fully present and really paying attention to what the topic is? And in that being genuine, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you're perfect, then you're not getting squat done. And if you're waiting for perfect, you know, they talk about it prevents profits, Mark Cuban. And if you have a time frame, I mean, back to Ken's point about, I didn't have enough time to make a short presentation. Now, come on, it takes a lot of work.
Mhm.
And if you're going to have a minute on the punchline to stand up and present to a board or present to an audience, that's not spontaneous, but you've done that 100 times.
Right.
You have practiced it. You know how much 30 seconds is, you know how much 2 minutes is, and it goes differently when you're live. And then you have the tangents. You jump off on other stuff and lose your way. But being genuine and listening to it, I too haven't listened, you know, to the vice president on purpose. I hate news. I despise what goes on in the negativity in the political world. It just makes me angry. If I'm in a boardroom, if I'm in a management meeting, your slide that you had up, I mean, that CEO, to have somebody else run the meeting so he or she can be a participant, and then to have the rules, there are no bad ideas, and you get a free flow on where it takes you. You know, to me, those are the genius situations. Those are the ones that if you practiced it and you got your inner circle to say, hey, that was good, that was bad, here's what worked, here's what didn't. I mean, I remember at a very young age, early in my career, I'm standing in front of a group of sales managers that are running, back even those days, I was like a $50 million business. And I'm up front giving it my all. And one of the guys said, get your finger out of your navel, you're scratching your navel. Very true story.
Wait, literally or figuratively?
Literally, I'm there in a nice outfit and I'm presenting and I'm scratching my belly button.
So it was like the nose scratching I talked about.
That's it. You do things
Wow.
that you don't realize.
Yeah.
And that distracts and you don't even hear it. Now, that's in the art
Yeah.
of being present. I was unconscious about the idea or not conscious about the idea of what I was doing with my hands. Well, how silly.
Mhm.
But if you got close enough friends to fix that, Ken, you're smiling.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just a great point. All that nonverbal stuff that interferes with what we're trying to present and changes the meaning. It makes us look very different from the way we think that we're coming across to others. I mean, in our hands in particular, look, if I'm talking to you right now and if I have my hand here, well, he's thinking about it. Here, kind of confused. Here, I'm lying. Yeah, and those are the messages that come across. So if we're scratching something, you know, that's distracting, and it's diverting from the message you're trying to send. That's how difficult the actual communication process is. So many factors can interfere with it. Even the pace. If suddenly I start talking a lot faster, now you're hearing what I'm saying, but I'm talking, what's this guy trying to put across? As opposed to every single word, oh, he's lying. You know, it's all coming out non-verbally that we all have to be so careful of. We're trying to engage in accurate and effective two-way communication with others. So Gary, your point coming across is very well. And the old expression, you know, contemplating one's navel certainly
Yeah.
jumps into this.
Eric, have you ever been embarrassing like that in terms of scratching your navel?
No, but I will say this. I will say this. When I was at Stanford, public speaking was one of the mandatory course. Like it was one semester of literally 1 hour every week of grilling. Like you pick a topic out of the hat and you're going up to the stage and speak 5 minutes to your classmate with virtually no preparation. And that was very nerve-wracking. But a couple of things they taught us, similar to what you're saying, Gary, is number one, people do a lot of when they speak, right? So instead we will learn just to pause, to use silence to fill the gaps, because those is people's way to fill the gaps. So use the silence, right? And another funny one, similar to your naval story, is people do the penguin move, like they swing their arms. Instead of talking passionately with their hands, their arms just on the side, swing up and down like a penguin. So I have seen a lot of that even today.
Ed, how did you become so genuine?
It's almost embarrassing. So not quite. I mean, thank you. The world is listening to you. Thank you. So I stuttered when I was growing up and in high school. And I was afraid to speak in class in 7th grade, for instance, and then high school, 9, 10, 11, 12. And, you know, the girls would laugh at me. And I had some pimples too. So I was really in a mess. So somebody smart in Brookline High School got me in front of the football coach in what was a study session. They took me down the hall to this guy's office with no prep. And the football coach is a big guy, you know, wiffle and macho. And he says, "Why do you stutter?" So I said, "Well, my dad stuttered, and I grew up around that. And my dad was in high school a champion football player, and I couldn't figure out why he was stuttering, and I don't know why I'm stuttering." And so, frankly, doing the show is my therapy. And I got to make it good. And so I practice. It's my work, the real job. So I learned. So let me just back up and say that this football coach sat me down and says, "I'm going to get you to stop stuttering, but you don't have to do what I say. You have to want to do it." And so, you know, that kind of language and honesty, and talk about genuine. And so he says, "Well, do you like sports?" So I said, "Yeah, well, I love to watch and play tag football, of course, and, you know, playground tackling without equipment." So we sure did that. And I was a fast runner at sprint. and so I hit so my tongue gets in the way even now. So I love baseball, Red Sox from Boston. So he says, okay, here's the newspaper. Open it up the sports section. Read. I'll never forget this. I didn't stutter. He says, okay, this is what you're going to do. Go to the library down the hall here and go get a baseball book and take it home and read it. Start reading it tonight. You don't have to read the whole thing. Just start reading it and close the door and read it out loud slowly. And he started to teach me how to not stutter by thinking about it and by breathing, this breathing, and imagining what it is I want to say, even when looking at words, what pictures came into mind, and then expressing it. So this is program number 870 since I started doing this talk show in March of 2020 as a result of COVID shutting down my live conference business, which I was successful in producing over 30 years following a print publishing career. So I'm doing a lot of things in media, and media is public speaking, and the camera is on. And so I had no problem being in front of a camera once I figured out that I wasn't going to stutter anymore. And then I started getting dates with pretty girls. So the payoff. So this is a narrative, if you will, of answering that question.
I like the human unscripted, be ourselves part of it. And as you start off with in a sentence or the presentation, and you've got your inner circle, your buddies that look at you or snap their fingers, you break that habit and you hear it. Or if you're there trying to get a presentation to really work and you sound rote and prepared and not genuine, somebody constructively calls you on that. If you walk into a situation and your boss doesn't care about that, pick another time. If you have a relationship where you can make your boss laugh or want to hit you with my terrible cat joke, you've got to know where your relationship is and isn't. The spontaneity of this is really important to me. I enjoy what this is and how we do it. And, you know, touch your navel in a presentation and your buddies say, but they're your, you know, they're your audience. You're trying to serve in a company. And if I'm there trying to raise money in a capital raise, and I've got my finger in my navel, goodbye, go home, and probably be fired. Rightfully so. So if in doubt, practice. If in doubt, work on it. I'm really touched by your story, Ed. I'm going to have to run to my next meeting. This is really a pleasure to be a part of this with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank you,
being
Gary.
on the show. The next one, I'll send you a notice. It's September 3, 8 o'clock in the morning. Great. Thank you all.
Fantastic.
Thanks to all of you. That's
Thank you,
great.
all of you.
Be
Take care.
well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.